This is Things I Found Online. We are looking at life through the lens of the internet, and I am Louise Palanker. On today's show, Spotify and gay dating apps. Our guests are Jim Frankel from Spotify and comedian Lauri Roggenkamp, who's not here. But I thought we would start with a game.
Okay.
Does anyone have their phone out? John, do you have your phone out? Can you go to Twitter? Go to Twitter and click on the little magnifying glass and tell me what's trending right now. And we'll see if any of what's currently trending on Twitter makes any sense to anybody.
Blonde espresso.
Blonde? No, that's promoted. John,
is that promoted?
Please.
Today's blonde?
Attenuate.
Apparently it's Law Enforcement Appreciation Day.
Yeah, so Breitbart is trending because they fired Steve Bannon. All right, what's next? Who's next? David Oyelowo?
You said that really well.
I love
Right.
him,
Who
and I
is he?
loved
An actor?
learning how to
Right.
pronounce his name. It was one of the best days I've ever had.
But wait, who is he again?
He is a great actor.
Right, from what though?
Oh, everything.
Okay.
He didn't he play Martin Luther King, for example?
That's it. That's
yes.
what I was thinking about.
So why?
Yes.
But why is he trending, John? He's going to star in Les Mis.
There we go.
Yes. Slack is trending because Slack is down. Jimmy, do you know about Slack?
I know about Slack. I don't really use Slack.
All right, so it's trending because it's down, and so all the tweets are about, hey, I can't even joke about this on Slack because it's down. Wah, wah. All right, moving on with the show, we're going to talk about Spotify because, Jim, you work at Spotify, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and what is your job title?
I was I guess I am the head of original video series, and I've been there for about a year and a half, during which time the video initiative on Spotify has changed a bit. Hitting the mic here. But yeah, that's my role. Was and is. The reason I'm saying was and is, I'll explain in a minute. Was overseeing original video series. The nature of those video series is changing a bit.
Okay, so when you first came on, what was the idea? Did Spotify have any original video content? Do people know that Spotify has original video content?
Yeah, it started. The first video that appeared on Spotify was mainly licensed content, so it was acquired content. And then it was right around the time that I started that we began producing original video content, and we were producing a number of original video series that was largely music-centric programming, playing largely in the unscripted space.
Okay, so it wasn't like 10 seasons of Mr. Belvedere.
Correct.
What were you acquiring?
That was like a little bit before my time, actually. I know that some of it had to do with like late night content.
Mm-hmm.
There was actually a lot of material that was acquired, but yeah.
Ooh, that could be Lauri.
Looks like we have another guest.
Yeah. Can you talk about what it's evolving into, or should we save that for later in the conversation?
Yeah, we could save that for later in the conversation. I mean, I guess, if you wanted to know some of what was done, during the time that I was, like, maybe I should tell you where we've been and then tell you like, where we're going, right?
Yes.
So, in terms of, where we've been, as I mentioned to you, we were doing largely music-centric programming that was playing largely in the sort of unscripted documentary space.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, in the shorter form content range. So, it kind of ran the gamut. We had some snackable sized content where we had, 2 to 4 minutes an episode.
Is that an actual term?
Snackable?
That you guys use in the workspace?
Yes. So
snackable. Okay.
Yeah.
Bite size. You ever come up with that one?
Sure.
What if I worked there? Would you adopt it?
Perhaps. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
fun size?
Yeah. So snackable is not just,
fun size?
Since this is about the internet.
Okay.
In general, it's not strictly a Spotify term. It's a term that's used in the digital space.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and then I had other content that, like, another outlier, another series that I think you watched some of yesterday called Music Happens Here, which was more in the half-hour range. I would say most of the content probably fell in the 10 to 20-minute range.
How short do you have to be considered snackable?
In my mind,
yeah,
I'd say 5 minutes or less.
Ooh.
I don't know that there's a hard and fast rule, but
okay.
Yeah, I would say less than 5 minutes.
All right. So when you started, did they say, okay, what are your ideas, or did they say to you, here's the name of the shows and we would like you to create them?
Some was already in the pipeline, and then some we embarked on during the time that I was there. Okay,
so one thing I want to know before we get really deep into this, because I have sampled many of your shows. I mean, they're shows with various episodes, and they have a theme. Do people who aren't me know how to access your content, and am I just being really ridiculous about my complaint that it's not available on the internet or on the television that may be hanging on a wall so that you're not like this for half an hour? Am I being ridiculous? Do young people get it?
I think you're being generational is what I would say.
Ooh, you guys have so many terms that are just current.
Yeah, stop being generational.
Yeah, stop being... So, Lauri...
And generational is a euphemism, I'm taking it?
It just means old. It means old, John. Wink. So, Lauri's here. Now, you know that Jim works at Spotify.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he creates original content for Spotify, but you have to go to the Spotify app to watch it. You can't... It's not even on the app that's on your computer.
And it is. It is on the app on your computer.
Couldn't find it on my iPad either. All right. Are these legitimate complaints?
Every complaint is legitimate.
Okay, so but do you get the complaints from other people saying, I kind of want to relax and enjoy this, but I can't really relax with my arms up over my head?
No. Not specifically.
It's just me. Lauri, will you watch a 30-minute show on your phone?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I primarily watch all shows on my phone, mostly because I don't have a TV.
How do you get comfortable? Where do you put the phone and your eyes?
Oh, I'm never comfortable.
Oh.
So I think that I just get used to it. I have a stand on my phone. I left my backpack in the other room, but I have like this pop-up out stand on my phone, so I just usually lay it on my night table, and then I sleep on my side, so I just put it whatever side I decide to sleep on.
So why are people willing to contort themselves into such positions when the television has already been invented?
Well, I will say that my nieces, right? We talked about this, are 6 and 11 years old.
Yes.
And I will say that generally speaking, anytime I see them consuming content, they are positioned like this.
Okay.
They have their device in their lap.
Right.
And that is how they are consuming earbuds, and that's how they're consuming content.
All right. So, assuming that people watching this show right now have never accessed the Spotify special content, Jim, talk them to it. How do they get there? Navigate it, because the first thing John said when he walked in was, "Where's the link?" And I said, "That's just it. There's not a link. There's instructions."
There's two pathways to the content.
Right.
So one is you when you open your app, you go to the home page and you scroll down until you reach a shelf called Spotify Original Video Series. And it's there for you.
And that's your shelf.
And that's our shelf.
Okay.
And then you can also click on Browse. So you can either go to Home or you could go to Browse. And if you go to Browse, once you're in Browse, there's a tab called Videos. And when you click on that, it'll take you into the video content as well.
Okay, so I got there, followed your instructions. I stopped for directions a couple times, but the guy was nice. And Eddie had some sweet tea, like in the song. So I watched the London show, which you recommended, and to me, it was frustrating because I loved it so much, like I wanted to be inside of it. And because I love music and I love documentaries, so that was everything. And the cinematography is like insane, and it's just beautiful, and it just makes you feel this warm glow of like being a part of music throughout time. And I didn't like watching that on my phone. So aside from that, it's way better than you think it's going to be. Like I thought Spotify original programming would sort of be like a Snapchat story. Like I really underestimated what it could be.
Well, we took, we said that when we embarked on this, we said that we wanted to create premium content, and I took that seriously. And premium was the operative word for me.
Yeah, and it definitely is. Like it's award winning.
Thank you.
And so, Lauri, do you use Spotify?
I don't at the moment, mainly because I got a free 3-month subscription to the app iTunes one, and so I canceled my Spotify while I do the 3-month subscription. But I will probably go back to it because I just realized that I have all of my playlists on Spotify.
Yeah.
And the thought of having to create new playlists is just exhausting.
Yeah, especially with your arms up.
Yeah. So I just, but for right now, I don't. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I like you said, I love watching documentaries about music, and I just love learning about all sorts of musical aspects. So I'll definitely check that out.
Cool. So it's really good. And so, would you please describe the 3 shows that you told us to check out? Just in your words, describe the Music Happens Here,
sure,
and then the next one, which was very trippy, the one you told me to watch, and we'll get there. But start with Music Happens Here. Like, how would you describe it?
I would say that Music Happens Here is a show that uses locations, places as the entry point to tell the great stories behind music and the artists who make music. So I always like to tell the story of what inspired the series, because I think it kind of explains what the series is.
Okay.
So several years ago, the production company that ended up producing the series for us was producing a documentary on a collaboration between Skrillex and the surviving members of The Doors.
Okay.
Oh.
And they were shooting with the guys out on Venice Beach. And as they were walking along the boardwalk, at one point, Ray Manzarek, the late Ray Manzarek, stopped them in front of an apartment building. And he said, "Oh, you see that window right there?" And he pointed at this window on the 4th floor of this apartment building. And he said, "That's where Jim Morrison wrote L.A. Woman." And that sparked an idea, right? Like, oh my God, those stories must exist everywhere. So it's the idea that the inspiration behind the music that you love is all around you. You just have to know where to look.
Yeah.
And so we ultimately decided to sort of use geography as the guiding principle of the show. And so each episode is city-centric. So the first episode was Los Angeles. The second episode we did was London. We did New Orleans, Nashville, Seattle, and so on. We're going to be finishing with New York. But each episode is city-centric, and within each episode you probably get 7 to 10 individual stories, a la like the Jim Morrison story, right? Which actually, that story appears in the Los Angeles episode.
Wow.
But again, it's not, oh, you see that window right there? That's where Jim Morrison wrote L.A. Woman. It's, you see that window right there? That's where Jim Morrison wrote L.A. Woman. And what's the whole story behind that?
And then you break in.
Exactly.
They've been released already?
Everything, the first 7 episodes have been released. New York will be coming down the pike in 2 weeks.
I think actually, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No
you.
problem.
I think actually I'm a special ed aide, and the students in my class were talking about that. Today's Tuesday, right? Monday, yesterday.
Really?
Because I was saying how I liked Sonic Highways, the HBO documentary, and that sounds familiar because they were saying that there's something about that, but I didn't know. I was half paying attention.
It is similar to Sonic Highways, which
Sure.
of course, I'm also in love with, and our own Justin Lebens won an Emmy,
Right, for mixing,
for
right?
mixing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
One thing I will say,
Yeah.
because you watched the London episode, it happens to be the first segment in that show. One of the things that we do in the series as well is that every episode of the series has what we call the cover story, in which a contemporary artist covers a classic track in the recording studio where that track was originally recorded.
Yes.
So in the London episode, we have One Republic covering Champagne
Oasis.
Supernova
Yeah.
by Oasis
Yeah.
at Abbey Road Studios,
And that was so
which is where
cool.
that track was mastered, not recorded. So we kind of cheated. In the Los Angeles episode, local natives
We'll
are
let you
covering
slide.
Fleetwood Mac's Tusk at the Village Recorder, which is a famous recording studio that they actually built. This is part of the story. They built Studio D for Fleetwood Mac to record the album Tusk.
Really?
So they spent like $1 million to build this new studio. That was the first album that was recorded there. Yeah.
Was there a special? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to. But was there a special reason why they had to build that studio, or?
They
she
Or
has
is that-
very big hair. Big hair.
They have very big egos.
and a lot of money and a lot of money to spend. They had just I think what's like in the story is that, like, so they had obviously just come off Rumors, which was the biggest album of all time at that time, and basically every recording studio in the world, I think, was trying to get Fleetwood Mac to record their next album there. And so I think, like, one of the ways the Village Recorder sort of won that contract, so to speak, was they offered to build them a brand new recording studio, everything that Lindsey Buckingham would have wanted.
Oh wow!
He essentially designed
It's like
the studio.
recruiting high school athletes to come here.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's hookers. Okay. So the next show that you told me to watch is called what's it called, Jim? Traffic Jams.
Traffic Jams.
Which literally is about people writing a song on the way to a gig.
Yeah.
And then he shoots me towards the T-Pain episode. And that was a trip.
Right? He's fun, right?
So,
Well, listen, what that show, right, is really all about is the chemistry between the two people in the back seat.
So cute.
And the chemistry between the two of them is amazing. And quite honestly, like, I was not familiar with Southside, the producer, before we shot that episode. And he was like a superstar.
Genius.
Right?
Yeah. Really fun. So they're in the car and they're talking to people in buses and and drinking wine and writing songs. And then they get to the gig and it's all these people who look like, they're extras in Hard Day's Night and they're like ready to go. And so it was really fun.
Yeah.
So who else is in Traffic Jams? Like, cause it's kind of like a little bit carpool karaoke-esque, except instead of just singing songs, you're actually creating them.
Yeah. So T-Pain is one episode. An up-and-coming rapper named Pell is another episode. Drom, D period, R period, A period, M period. Yeah. So Drom was,
How'd you do that?
He was really probably, at the time that we did this, he was probably the biggest rapper on the service in terms of like monthly active users. Joey Badass.
Oh, is this all rap and hip hop? The whole show?
The whole show is
cool.
all rap and hip hop. Yeah. It was a hip hop series. We did this in conjunction with All Deaf Digital.
Okay, really cool. Yeah. And then the next show that you had me watch is another complete trip, and it's called Drawn and Recorded. And I guess you take like some sort of famous show business story, and
it's from music stories, so it's like largely untold stories from the annals of music history,
right?
As narrated by T-Bone Burnett,
and
then animated by this really.
This takes the elevator. Like if you're doing the elevator pitch, there's someone just pressing any button to get off the elevator at the next floor because it's like so crazy, but it works, right? So it's T-Bone Burnett narrating a famous show business story, and then it's animated. And the one, that I watched was the Louis Armstrong because.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, so go ahead, you explain it.
Yeah, so it's, as we say, like this would be snackable, by the way. These episodes are about 4 minutes long.
Yes, very tasty.
So about 4 minutes long, and like we say, they're sort of stylized narratives, I would say, both in terms of the way they're written, obviously T-Bone's delivery, and then the animation. And that animator is this really amazing animator out of the Pacific Northwest. He's quite the Renaissance man. His name is Drew Christie. And he not only animates, but he's really responsible for researching a lot of those stories, doing some of the writing, animating, and then he also scores a lot of those as well. He's a musician. So he's a true Renaissance man.
Yeah. So have you guys done any fact checking regarding there being any substance behind the veracity of any of these stories?
Absolutely.
Okay, because the story that I watched was about Louis Armstrong tricking Richard Nixon into smuggling pot.
Yeah.
So, where's your second source?
Well, I can't divulge my sources.
I actually just finished listening to a podcast that said that Jackie Gleason and Richard Nixon were really good friends, and Richard Nixon was drinking with Jackie Gleason and was talking about how cool the White House was, and was like, "Do you want to see an alien?" And Jackie Gleason was like, "Yes, I do." And he showed him like a body of an alien, I mean, who knows if it's true, but it just seems to me that it's funny that two stories now are Richard Nixon doing something crazy.
Yeah, I think maybe Michael Wolff has been sitting on the same couch in the White House for like the past 40 years, and he's got, just a lot of that stuff. He'll, just suddenly call some reporter and leak it.
Yeah.
That guy's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm ready to believe anything now, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would love it if there were aliens,
Donald Trump is president, so why not an alien in Nixon's closet?
True.
Just why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the debate, because I don't know if you're ready or willing to talk about this, but, obviously at Spotify, they decided that they wanted to keep this content on their platform to drive people towards their platform rather than allowing it to be shared throughout the internet, or having anybody just say, "Oh, I found this," and wanting to even message it to a friend. Like there's just no link at all.
Well, we did distribute some social content that essentially teased people to the full length content on Spotify. Okay. So you could say it was a little bit of a network mentality. Right? That you obviously the world has changed a little bit. I mean, most networks now have apps of their own, but generally speaking, like if you want to watch ABC programming, you either watch it on ABC or you go to the ABC app on your phone. So it was a similar mentality to that, which is the idea that you come to Spotify for this content.
The reason I don't think that that's a completely valid analogy is because on your television in 1968, you would turn you'd have a television and then you'd turn to channel 7.
Right.
And then turn back to channel 4. But
right.
Spotify isn't even on the internet. It's a completely separate app.
It's an app, correct.
You have to leave the internet. So it's like iTunes in that.
However, what I will tell you is that people spend like true Spotify users, loyal Spotify users spend hours a day.
It's always open.
It's always open.
So for them, that's not a tough putt.
Correct.
But for your mom, she's just like, Jimmy, I'm not sure where to tell people that you work. Help me explain it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's similar. Like, listen, I came up at MTV, right? And, I think when we were coming up at MTV, like MTV was the rebellious teenager. You didn't necessarily want your mom watching MTV. It's a little different now, right? I think one of the reasons why MTV is in the position it's in now is like, this is like my own sort of cultural theory, but there's these moments, sort of every generation has its dividing line, right? And so for young people in the 50s and 60s and even the 70s, one thing that the younger generation owned that their parents did not was rock and roll.
Right.
And then in the 80s, MTV came along. And now MTV was something that belonged to the youth, that was something their parents didn't have when their parents were young.
Right.
Now, like today's parents grew up on MTV, but what does today's younger generation have that their parents don't? And that is social media, which is why I was the MTV generation. And I think today's young people are the social media generation.
So for them, Spotify is an app. It does exist on their phone, so it does exist on the device.
It's part of their everyday universe.
Right. So it doesn't bother them that you can't get the programming on your Apple TV, even though you could get Hulu on your Apple TV. It doesn't bother anybody that you have to use your phone. Like the best.
Well, I can't speak for everybody.
But
generally
Lauri,
speaking,
wait. So you can use it on like an app, like my Fire Stick has a Spotify app. I could probably watch it there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like for me it wouldn't be an issue. Not like I'm on Spotify. Spotify's open all the time. It's kind of like Netflix, really. It's like you have to be in Netflix to watch Netflix, but
right. But so you're saying that if I had an Amazon Fire Stick,
yeah, or
then I could watch
like a Roku, whatever. Like most of those have like a Spotify app. I feel
they
like
do?
Apple TV does.
Oh, they do?
Yeah,
I actually don't know.
I think
for
Apple
sure.
TV
they might
does.
not,
You can
but-
also do screen mirroring too.
All right, so it's like Crackle.
Yeah.
You could,
Yeah.
if you could get it on your Apple TV, then you could. I just feel like your shows I would want to watch on a TV. That's how I would watch them. You have two hands for the popcorn. You're not, you're not like. I mean, I was propping my phone up against my mug, and then it kept sliding. So then I had to reinforce that with like a Kleenex box. I just feel like we've come too far with wall mounting for me to be fussing with this.
Right.
Or maybe I'm just, generationally challenged. All right,
I think
Jim.
you just prefer watching things on a larger screen.
Yeah.
Like, I think in a similar vein, I just never will ever be able to grasp having like a Kindle, because I just like the feel of like reading a book.
Okay.
So I think you
Fair
like
enough.
that. You like the experience of being on a screen, and that's fine. I mean, a lot of people have that. So I think that's a good question. It's not may technically be because of your age, but it could also just be that you just prefer that experience. And I know there are a lot of people who prefer that experience. So it's good to kind of have that question for those people who do prefer that experience.
Right. So, as we're coming into this age where anything and everything is considered a television program, eligible for an Emmy Award, for example, Amazon programming and of course Netflix programming, and then when we get to Spotify programming, would you be eligible for an Emmy when your content is so specifically
yes, because I know that don't ask me, but I know that actually some of our content has been nominated for an Emmy.
Oh, great.
But I do think it's in like
Congratulations.
specific, like it's not going to be on the primetime Emmys. There's going to be, it's like a special category. I actually don't know like what some of the thresholds are for like which Emmy ceremony and awards you're eligible for. Because there's like the Creative Arts Emmys, and then
Right.
and it all ultimately like funnels up to the primetime Emmys.
So, Jim, are you an expert at all things Spotify? Or really no? You go and you
I
have a
wouldn't
parking spot and you go to work, but you don't really know like how to create a playlist or how like independent artists would get their stuff kind of better seen in the Spotify?
I could tell you how to build a playlist.
All right, how do we do that? Like pretend that everybody watching hasn't been to Spotify.
Right.
So first you go to the App Store, right?
Well, I mean,
And
if you already have Spotify, right? You would.
We could even we can back the truck up further. Let's say you have a phone.
Turn on your phone.
Yeah.
Turn on your phone.
Yeah.
You go to the App Store and in the search bar type in Spotify. Then you download it. It's free, right?
Yep.
And you can download the desktop version.
There is a free tier and there's a paid tier.
Okay, so that's a good question. What's the difference between free and paid? Like no ads?
Yeah, like if you're in the free tier, you're going to get served ads. If you're in premium, there's no ads.
Okay.
And I think with the free, you can't create playlists either. So you would have to get.
You can. I've been doing it.
Oh, you can.
Playlist,
okay.
but you can't choose a specific song to listen to. You have to just.
There's a shuffle. There's a shuffle functionality that is
gotcha.
automatic, so you don't have as much control of.
Well, then I'm
How much is the paid version?
$9.99.
Okay, reasonable.
A month. Yeah.
All right, so you download the app and then you just first I'd say start out with free and see if you like it, right?
Yeah. The thing is, though, I have to admit, like I haven't built a playlist in a while, so I don't even know if I could really. Instruct it.
You click on the little options thingy, and then you name your playlist, and then
to explain it.
Yeah, because I was doing it yesterday
Okay.
to prepare for my guest. And then you can add it to the playlist. It's just like creating an iTunes playlist, pretty much. Except in iTunes, you drag them in, right?
Yeah, you can also do it based off song. So sometimes, like when I had Spotify, what I like to do, if I had a song I liked, I would create the playlist. You can create it and then add it. Or if you want to just make a whole album a playlist, you can do that.
Yeah, and if you've got it on shuffle for some sort of curated playlist that Spotify, then if you really hear something that you like and you want to make sure that you get to hear it again, you can
save it.
Yeah, you can right click and it brings up all those options to save. Yeah, and then you can start and then Spotify starts to learn what you like and offer you more of that.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
One thing I also like to do is create stations. So if I hear a song or an artist that I like and I haven't heard it before, I'll create a station because then it takes that similar song or artist and it plays things that are similar to it. So you might
There's a lot of
algorithmic
technology.
So do you name your own stations?
No, it'll like if like there's a song called Drums that I just started listening to. I forgot the artist name, but I clicked or if I was on Spotify, I'd click station. And that's one thing I like about Spotify that the iTunes thing doesn't have, is that you can immediately create a station and then it'll just create the station as Drums by the artist. And then it'll start playing songs based off the algorithm, based off that song. So you don't necessarily get to name the station, but it'll name it itself by the song that you chose.
I'm pretty sure you can name a station, though. I'm pretty sure you can make your own as well. Rename it. You can like choose a bunch of artists that you like and then rename it and then like start it, like run the races, then it'll keep building off of that. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Mine would be like stuff I wrote in a car with T-Pain.
You got to stop asking me questions. 'Cause I don't really
so, how can independent artists become more visible on Spotify?
That's something I'm not an expert on.
Okay. So there's a new way because artists have been kind of complaining for years about their cut of what they make for each play. But there's a new way for artists to make money, and if you go on their profile, you can see that they can sell concert tickets through their profile, and they can sell merch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of looking up like what sort of merch that people would have available.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty standard. It's like mugs and T-shirts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like not that creative yet, but maybe they're going to get there because throughout the ages, merch has been very creative, as eBay will prove out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a trip to eBay, I don't know if you have those links, guys, but
Here we go.
so this is the Elvis toothbrush holder.
That's hilarious.
That's a must-have item, and it's only $11.99. So
what?
That means the market is basically flooded with these things. I think we should just buy it.
It's just
And then we have the Marie Osmond Vanity set. Because if you have nice, clean teeth, you're going to want to be as vain as Marie Osmond. And she had some hair going on in the 70s. You have the Marie Osmond?
She still does.
Yeah.
Not quite like the 70s.
I feel like Marie Osmond's basically, her yearly schedule calendar is like May, start gaining weight.
Right.
So that by November, she can be ready to lose weight and then shoot her holiday weight loss commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is how I did it.
So Marie Osmond's Vanity.
Oh, wow. That's
the thing about Marie Osmond was like
fair.
when she was 12, she looked like she was 40. So that's why Marie Osmond never ages, because she already was 40.
She's coming into her age.
Look, that's a 12-year-old child. You guys.
She's 12?
Yeah, she was 12 when she had Paper Roses out.
Oh, my God.
And that Vanity. Oh, ooh, let me see the picture of Donnie Marie. How sweet. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That hair is laminated.
Impressive.
It's very impressive. Then we have the Bay City Rollers spoons. Were you Jimmy? What was your boy band of choice?
Well, like as a really young kid, probably the Bay City Rollers.
Bay City Rollers spoons. Yeah. Can you hover over those guys? Because these guys were kind of dreamy, and they were tartan and plaid.
Yeah, I mean the funny thing is they're really not dreamy. Like if you look individually at any given one, they're really not dreamy. Like collectively, when you saw the photo, you were like, "Oh, they're cute."
Yeah,
but then they're really not.
Who did you like? Anybody?
I don't remember.
Does anyone remember one name of one Bay City Roller?
They all look like aliens who can't figure out how to actually smile.
Were they American? I guess they were based.
They were
San
Scottish.
Francisco.
Wasn't that the whole thing?
The
plaid.
Smile.
Okay, got it.
Was it they were Scottish?
But did they have some connection to San Francisco?
They were gay.
I don't know.
What was the big hit Saturday night? No, that's
all right. Saturday night. All right. Something like that.
All right. So I saved the best for last. It's Growing Hair Cher. Do you have Growing Hair Cher? She is outstanding. I would just keep growing her hair and then stuffing it back in and then growing it again. If I had this doll. Now, this doll is expensive. What's the price of this doll, John?
$300.
For a Growing Hair Cher.
But zoom out. It says Mego. Rare Vintage 1976 Mego.
Mego. Maybe that's the company that made them.
That rhymes with Lego.
And it's actually $375, but they're giving you a 20% discount.
Oh, that's right. She's right.
And you can put it on layaway for $27.
Make an offer. We should probably make an offer of like $20. And then, you don't sign into my... Oh my God. Did that give away like my email address and my...
Thomas is trigger happy on buying now.
Did that give away like my, our...
Social Security.
Okay, yeah.
That's how you log into eBay.
Right. All right, who's ready to talk about gay dating apps? Anybody? Because Lauri, you're gay, right?
Yes, I am.
Jim, you're gay?
I am.
So are you guys in relationships at all?
Not.
Yeah.
You're in a relationship. But have you, upon occasion, ventured into...
He's about to not be in a relationship. I think that's the...
Is that where we're heading?
Yeah.
This is going to be a fun...
I guess I would probably select the It's Complicated option on Facebook right now.
As Mitch Hedberg says, I'm not in a relationship, but I know somebody who would be upset if I said I wasn't in a relationship.
There we go.
So
Genius.
Yeah.
All right. So have you guys ventured into the gay dating apps? Or do you just go to the regular dating apps and then just say, I'm looking for a woman or looking for... Like, do you...
I just go to Craigslist.
You go to Craigslist, okay?
No.
And I've been generally the gay dating app thing.
All right. So which ones... Okay. So we have a list of the best... Do you have that link, Thomas? It's like... Because there's a lot to choose. So 12 best LGBT dating... So let's scroll through and see if you guys have visited any of these.
Zoosk?
Is Zoosk? Has anyone been to Zoosk?
Nope.
No,
Zoosk.
I haven't tried that one yet.
What is it, John? Describe it.
Zoosk is exploding in popularity with LGBT singles, and it boasts one of the slickest apps on the market. Getting started is free and easy as is, finding like-minded singles in and around any zip code. No need to waste time on long surveys either. Just a couple questions and the app will start working. It's magic for you.
All right. Then we have Elite.
Elite singles.
Huh?
No. Let's keep going. Let's keep scrolling because I'm curious if they're drawing a distinction.
Elite. Then we have
Adult
Friend Finder. Okay.
Oh, I haven't
Got
seen
it.
that one.
Let's keep
Got it.
going.
And then we have Match. Okay,
Oh,
Match.
I've done
Yeah.
Match.
Yeah, so I think what's happening here,
Friend
I'm
Finder.
curious to see as we keep going down.
Yeah, Friend Finder.
If they're drawing a distinction between dating apps and
so these are
hookup
all just
sites
apps.
and hookup apps.
For
Well, you see
hookup
what I'm
and
saying?
dating.
Like,
Yes.
let's just keep scrolling.
Well,
'cause I'm
he's kind of
curious.
naked, so I've.
This
Yeah.
one says it's like for horny gay lesbian single, like horny gay and lesbian single. So I think we've crossed that.
Yeah, what's
Threshold.
curious is I've never heard of Friend Finder.
So yeah,
I
so-
have-
that Men Nation?
Men Nation.
where is this
Oh.
list coming from? I'm curious.
Yeah. What's the URL?
Datingadvice.com.
Oh,
I
dating.
I have a feeling that this.
There's
Well, there's
Tinder and Grindr
Grindr.
finally.
Okay, yeah. See, I wonder if this is like paid.
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh, you pay to be there?
Yeah, you pay to be on this list.
All right.
Because
so,
if you were gonna like be doing this for real, like for gay men, like Grindr and
Grindr
Scruff would be number 1 and 2.
Yeah. Okay. So Grindr. So let's talk about Grindr. Is it mostly hookups, or do people go there looking for relationships?
Well, I mean, I would say both. I would say that it's predominantly a hookup site, but in today's world, it's kind of the equivalent of like going to the gay bar. So you'll meet a lot of people that are in relationships, and when you say how did you meet, they will say Grindr.
Okay. Lauri, is Grindr for gay women or just gay men?
I think it's mostly for gay
It's just
men. Because I've never been on it, and primarily what I've heard is that it's just gay men.
Okay, so where do gay women go for internet dating?
I primarily used her.
So that was on there, yeah.
I haven't heard of the Lesbian Personals or Zoosk, and then Tinder. Tinder's a big one, but that's mostly for like hookups and stuff. But I mean, I don't know. Dating for me online is just awkward and weird. I've had friends who've had a lot of success with it, but I just always get caught in that like 6-month-long conversation where you're just like, all right, well now we're just pen pals. So
right. So how, if you're talking to somebody online, at what point should you meet before it becomes okay, we're never going to meet?
Probably
within like the first month, I would say.
And how is it for men?
The first hour, but,
right?
I mean, like, okay. Well, you asked a specific question there, like, how long should you chat with somebody before you actually meet? And what I would say is that, like, oftentimes the chat doesn't last for very long before you're meeting, but there are occasions where you'll like connect with somebody strictly like in your online conversation, and then that can like drag on for a long time, like whether your schedules don't mesh or, it's like neither person can host, so there might not be availability for like you to go to their place or them to come to your place, whatever. So it might like drag on for like a long time, and then one of two things will happen. Like either like it fizzles out, or like what I have found sometimes is like you make this connection, the conversation, like if you don't end up meeting right away, the conversation tends to like ebb and flow, and then there might just be that like one like crazy moment where one day you guys connect online and suddenly you're available to meet, and you end up meeting after this like really long period of time, and it finally happens. Mm-hmm.
So how much of dating apps is just the idea of people, and how much of it is just, in other words, like it's like if you lived in the mall where you could always sort of be browsing, mm-hmm. so you can pick up your phone and just always be browsing, and so there's always that idea that, oh, the next time I swipe, that could be my person.
Absolutely. And I
are
think
we
that's
in love
why,
with that as much as we are in love with love?
Yeah. Well, I think that what it's done, I think it's jeopardized love.
Okay.
In the sense that what I will say to your point, like you have the mall in your pocket all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so it is. It's a challenge. Like if you are in a for me, like, and I've talked openly about this with my partner, right? Mm-hmm. So like one thing that like I discovered about myself, and maybe dating apps contributed to this, is I love the notion of possibility, right? And once you get into a committed relationship, to some degree, you're shutting the door on possibility. If you're going to commit to a monogamous relationship, you're basically saying, regardless of who walks around the corner next, I already have someone, right? So, but what's dangerous about having a dating app is that literally at any point in time, you can have somebody walk around the corner.
There's a lot of corners.
That next person's going to walk around the corner.
So many corners.
So that's where it's challenging. It's why, and it's not just dating apps. Like you hear oftentimes also like how Facebook is breaking up marriages, right? Why? Because like people are connecting with old flames, and suddenly like you've been with someone for 18 years, and now there's like this person from your past that suddenly reemerges that you once had great sex with, and they want to get together after 15 years or 20 years. And
yeah.
So like you hear about that on like Facebook too. It's not just dating apps.
It's like the shopping channel of people. And
well, it's what and it's the other, see, this is my curiosity. I've had this conversation with people recently, and I don't know what the answer to this question is. And I think there's I think it's a little bit of all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
Like one thing that kind of like fascinates me. So when you're on dating apps, gay dating apps, like it's amazing like how many men are on these apps in a DL capacity, and many of them are married.
Okay.
Right?
To women?
To women.
Okay.
Yeah. And now, and that factors into what I'm going to talk about here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Though not everybody has to be married to like sort of relate to the question I'm going to ask. But so one thing that I've asked is like, if you go back generations, right? My father's generation, your father's generation, our grandparents' generation, like, were there always this many gay men? And did so many of them live these tortured, miserable lives? Or are there like, is there a greater percentage now of the population that is gay, or at least aware that they're gay, not only because of biology, but partly because it's part of their consciousness in a way that it never was in the past? So like there's gay imagery everywhere, right? So does it make men more curious?
No.
See, I disagree. And hang on once. And then the flip side of it too is that never before though has experimentation or curiosity been so readily acted upon.
Well, I mean, I think what you're talking about is maybe more options for bi people to actually consider themselves to be bi without stuffing it down. But like if you were gay in 1950, you were gay and you were attracted to a handsome man when you were 3. You didn't know what that was. You just wanted to look at Rock Hudson. So it's like before, it predates sex.
But
it's being drawn to.
Okay, but like, okay, so I say, like when people say, when did you know you were gay? Like I always say, well, I always knew. Like when I was 4 years old, I sensed there was something different about me. When I was in nursery school, I was more drawn to like want to go play with the girls than I was to like go play with the boys, right? I remember being 6 years old, literally 6 years old, and thinking that like another boy was cute.
Sure.
And knowing that I wasn't supposed to think that.
Aww.
Okay? Now, that said, that's me. I'm always kind of fascinated. I do have friends and acquaintances who will say it didn't really dawn on them until much later in their life. Like sometimes even college. And my feeling is if you are not really sort of awakening to your own sexuality until your college years, then you are, I think, more susceptible to the imagery that you're seeing in pop culture and all around you in culture as you're growing up.
Okay, so whether or not it's sexualized imagery, for example, I went to camp and my bunk was across I'm not going to say her name because she's a lady like me who lives somewhere, but she had up over her bunk a pinup of Elizabeth Montgomery, Bewitched. And I didn't understand why, because, I had the cowsill, I had boys, and I didn't understand. I didn't know there were gay people. Like it hadn't all been explained to me. So what made her want to look at Elizabeth Montgomery? It wasn't sex. She just wanted to look at Elizabeth Montgomery.
Sure. But you just said something really important. Okay. You said when you were growing up, you didn't know that there were gay people.
I didn't.
Okay. And so even for me, and I'm not that old, like I'm Gen X, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, like growing up, like I always talk about this, like when I think about my youth, right? And I'm talking all the way through like my college years. Like when I think about pop culture, like generally speaking, I remember like the only sort of like real sort of gay imagery that I remember is like Stephen Carrington on Dynasty. And he was the gay son of Blake Carrington that Blake was ashamed of. And that was pretty much like it. And then there was like that movie in 1982, like Making Love.
But what I'm saying is
but listen, but hear me out for 1 second. My point is that for so many people, gay like isn't even on the radar.
Right.
And then, but when it is on the radar, does it suddenly become something that then you start to apply to yourself in a way that you might not have?
What I'm saying is whether or not I knew that being gay was a thing, that girl knew that she was attracted to Elizabeth Montgomery. She didn't have to see 2 gay women in a movie to know that she personally was attracted to that beautiful woman. Did you know that when you were a kid, were you attracted to other girls?
Yes. It took me a while to figure out what that meant, because for a really long time I didn't know there were any gay people. And I didn't know what that meant. I just assumed that I was just going to be like I was just like, oh, I haven't met the right guy. essentially. Like, no guy was, I liked men, I liked hanging out with men, but no guy made me feel like butterflies. I didn't have, when I was a teenager, all the girls had like posters of boys that they liked, and I stole my picture from my mom, and it was Burt Reynolds, and I put it on my locker because I was like, well, this will do.
So it was just trying to fit in.
Yeah, because I was just like, who cares? You know, this is a man, like any other man. So it didn't really mean sex to me. It meant like you were saying, connection. But I kind of see what you both are saying, and I think it's actually a lot more similar than what you think. I think I do think that, you know, when I first started realizing what was happening, and that it was me being a lesbian, you know, to find things that actually had lesbian characters in them that didn't die at the end, was pretty hard to do. And I think now that it's so, I mean, my cousins talk about their gay friends in high school. You would never have a gay friend in high school. Like, it would be, there was a girl in our class who was acted like a boy and dressed like a boy. And that was like the closest that we ever got to having like gay, but she was constantly taunted, not even by us, by the teachers, saying like, you have to wear a dress. You have to do this. So it's just like, you know, I mean, it was just it's a different, I think opening that up is allowing more people to see like, hey, this could be okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's
awareness and exposure.
Yeah, but I think that my Uncle Marvin was gay, and he grew up and moved to California from Buffalo because he didn't think that he could ever be himself and stay home in Buffalo. So he moved out here. He never came out. He lived and died. He never came out. He had a whole bunch of friends that were a huge part of his life, and he never explained any of that part of his life to us, his nieces and nephews. So,
and that would be a far rarer situation in today's world.
Of course it would, but he didn't need to see Tony Curtis dressed as a woman in a movie to know that he liked boys. He liked boys. He was going to like boys, and as soon as you came in 1950, as soon as you came to Los Angeles and you went to where you know, you figured it out. Everyone probably has a journey that's a little bit different and a little bit the same. Like, you put one foot in front of the other, and you find out that, oh, there's people here who feel the way I do, and I think I'm going to be okay. But you kept that whole that romantic part of your life, and you had to write home about some girl you were about to marry, but you never married. In my uncle's case, it was Cece, and she was lovely, but you know, she was his beard, you know, and I don't think anybody has to do that anymore unless you like stay in Nebraska or stay in Oklahoma. Yeah. I think if you leave and go to any bigger, even within Oklahoma or Nebraska, there's a big enough city to where, you know, you can be yourself. But coming out is still hard for a lot of people, but the internet certainly makes it easier for people to say, well, this is a thing. Yeah. And I'm not unusual.
Well, I also think, and I don't mean to, what I'm assuming you mean is, I also think that, you know, I know you say that people, they know they're gay. I don't think necessarily, for the most part, and I'm taking my own experience. So, you know, I mean, it could be, you know, you said you knew you were gay all the time. I mean, I knew I was different. I could definitely say that from like when I was 7. And so I think that maybe a lot of people kind of still assume that like, oh, relationships and sex and everything, that's, you know, that's meant for, you know, finding somebody you love. But in southern states and in really religious states, it's still an institution. It's still like, no, the boys and the girls are separated until they come together for marriage, and then they have a bunch of kids. So it's not necessarily it's almost like an arranged marriage in some ways. And so I think that when you have that feeling of I'm different, I don't know why, but I feel different. You don't necessarily go, I'm gay. You go, okay, well, I'm just a different person. And so then you meet somebody and you go, well, I don't necessarily love them, but I get along with them, so I'm going to marry them. And then you have kids. And so I think with the outpouring of social media and everything, where it's becoming more noticeable, and it's showing people how they deal with being different and how they come to accept that they're gay, then somebody can see that and be like, oh my God, like that's me. I didn't realize it till right now, but that's me.
That's it. And I still think that there's some shame involved, and we're gonna get to this last portion of the show because it's dark, and why not end on something like completely disturbing? But I think that the answer to the question I'm going to ask you is that there's some shame involved. Deep seated shame, which is why, according to the internet, Grindr is a particularly dangerous dating app, so that people meet strangers and they murder them. And Jimmy loves true crime.
I do.
So we have a link to click on. This is I don't want to read out all of these different stories, but it's terrifying Grindr horror stories, and a lot of them have to do with like underage boys. And I don't want to conflate homosexuality with predatory behavior in any way. The stories are included there, but I think that's a whole separate thing. But I guess Jeffrey Dahmer is a good example.
I think it's first of all, it's extremely rare, and like secondly, like I'll bet that you would probably find more murders and even serial murderers that preyed upon victims in bars than you would on Grindr.
Okay, so you don't think that it's any more dangerous to go on Grindr and meet someone for a hookup than it is to go on Tinder and meet
to some degree, I think it's safer, and here's why.
Okay.
The person on the other end knows that there's a digital footprint of the conversation that you're having.
Dun, dun, dun.
So if you go to, if I go to a bar right now by myself, nobody knows that I've gone to that bar. I can meet a stranger there, leave with that stranger, and there's no trace that ever happened.
But let's get to the dark part
That's
of this.
why
Do you
I tell,
think
like,
that
4 people I'm going to bars? I'm always like, this is my location.
Yes. Do you think that in order for that article to exist, that the reason why people may think that there's more murders as a result of strangers meeting on Grindr is because people do feel some deep-seated shame that they just were attracted to this person, therefore I must kill him?
No. Well, listen, I think that listen, if you are a murderer by trade, it's a great tool. I'm going to use Grindr to like hook up with some guy I think's cute. Someone else might use Grindr to find their murderous desire. But I mean, of course, I'm being sarcastic here. But I mean, it's very rare. I mean, it's just like, people can find their victims anywhere. Mm-hmm. But I do think it's sort of like the old, right? Like one of the old jokes and cliches around online dating, like even before apps existed,
mm-hmm.
like just as soon as online dating started, right? The like sort of the old standby joke was, "You're not going to murder me," right?
Right. Of course.
It's just the joke that's associated with online
All right.
dating.
So let's close with some safety tips. Let's assume that you're right and it's perfectly safe to meet someone and online and be having sex with him a half an hour later. Let's assume that that's...
Well, I also think shame and sex go hand in hand in any scenario.
So there's some
women,
truth to my theory.
I think it is, but I also think that that is deep-seated in the person who's going to do it, and that is their justification.
I think there's a lot of women hating men. They hate their mom, and they hate women, and therefore they hate whoever they're attracted to.
There are women hating men. There are men hating women. There are, it's all over the place. If somebody wants to kill somebody, they will use any justification to do it. I mean, Gary Ridgway, who was a Green River killer who killed a bunch of prostitutes, he would go get the prostitute, sleep with them, and then be like, "Oh, you're a whore and I don't like whores, so I'm going to kill you." Or he'd get a prostitute, the prostitute would be creeped out and wouldn't want to sleep with them and be like, "Oh, well, you're a bitch for not sleeping with me, so I'm going to kill you." So it's like any justification he can do to kill these women. He didn't need a justification. I think with these serial killers, they don't need justifications. Their mentality is these people deserve to die, and however they need to get there, they will get there.
Okay, understood. So, and I think Jimmy's saying, like, I don't want you associating, crime with shame or homosexuality. It could be across the board.
Well, it could
for
be
any apparent.
Listen, it could be, but Grindr is just a means to an end. Like like Jeffrey Dahmer went to bars and picked up men that he then murdered.
So even if
I don't know if it had to do with shame in his case, but if it did, the point is you could find your victims in many different ways.
Okay, so what I want to close with is assuming that everyone's doing online dating and everyone's meeting people who are relatively strange to them, what are some safety tips that you should practice if you're going to be meeting people online and then not really knowing that much about them or their background, meet them in a location that is their home or your home or something like, because everyone says like, oh, if you're going on a blind date, like you should meet for coffee and take your own car, don't let him pick you up, like those things are the things that we tell people. What about dating apps? Like, do you guys practice any safety precautions?
Like, in truth, most people probably don't.
Yeah.
I think it's a risk you assume, and I think that it's probably about like, you know, if you're creeped out, don't walk through the door,
right,
kind of thing.
So there could be some red flags even when you're just communicating with the person, right?
Yeah, and then especially when you get to the location and you're face to face with the individual.
Well, always, I think the main ones are always meet in a public place the first time. Don't drive together. Don't offer to pick that person up. Don't offer to have them pick you up, because then now they know where you live.
Right.
Then I'll always tell somebody where you're going. If you don't, you know, either a friend or a parent or something. Sometimes I'll even like Google somebody beforehand, just on the off chance, you know, just to see like, oh, hey. But I mean, if I have to get to that point, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, well, do I really should I really meet this person if I need to do a background check?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say most of the time, like, yeah, like he said, if you can usually tell through, you know, chatting what this person's going to be like.
So trust your gut. Like in anything else in life, really, just if it feels wrong, it's probably wrong. So this is our things I found online mouse pad. If you have a mouse, if you would rather have a phone pocket, we have those on the way, which I'm going to hold up on next week's show. But I would love for you to go to iTunes and give us 5 stars and give us a nice review. It could really just consist of like, hey, this is a great show, send, enter whatever button works for you. But we would love for you to give us a review, and then you can go to our Facebook page, Things I Found Online Podcast, and write to us on Facebook and say, hey, I wrote you a review on iTunes. Send me some cool stuff. And we will. I want to thank Jim Frankel for being with us from Spotify, and comedian very funny Lauri Roggenkamp. And I want to thank in the studio Don Maddox and Thomas Hubble and their friend Chris, and Michael Menachem came. And of course, our social media guru is Dina Friedman. I'm Louise Palanker. We are Things I Found Online, and we will see you next week.